deep within, there flows a current of light that has never gone out, a healing ray that moves through you continuously, never absent, only waiting for your mind to open the door. Health is not a reward, nor is it a miracle reserved for a chosen few. It is the original state, the divine blueprint already sewn into every cell. We are not searching for something new. We are merely lifting away the layers of doubt, fear, and resentment to return to what has always belonged to us. And this journey, with 16 clear stages, will lead you from awareness to experience, from theory to reality, so that you will not only understand wholeness, but live it in the depths of the human being. There is a light that has never faded. It is not a reward for merit, nor is it a secret reserved for a chosen few. That light is the first imprint of life, the sacred source that has been present since the beginning. Many go through an entire lifetime without recognizing it, because their minds are veiled by the noise of fear, prejudice, and memory. But the truth is that this light has never left you. It has only been waiting for the door of consciousness to open, so it may flood in. People often think of healing as a process of seeking something external, a medicine, a method, or a miraculous intervention. But in truth, healing is a return, a removal of what conceals, not the addition of something new. When you look at your body and perceive limitation, that is merely a mirror reflecting the beliefs you have unknowingly held in your mind. Every tension, every fear, every distorted image of yourself becomes a veil, making you think that the inner light has gone out. In reality, it remains intact, only hidden from view. The first step into the journey of healing is not to struggle or fight, but to recognize that there is a principle greater than the body, greater than circumstances, operating within you. It is the natural flow of life, a stream that does not weaken with time, that is not affected by illness or crisis. It is the very source from which your body is woven, and as long as you are connected to that source, the power to restore remains untouched. This primordial light is not borrowed from anyone, nor is it earned by your deeds. It belongs to you like breath, like heartbeat, like the silent intelligence working within every cell. You do not need to grasp it. You only need to return to it. Just as the sun shines everywhere, yet a room remains dark. If its window is shut, healing is not about pulling light from the outside, but about opening the window within, so that the light already present can pour through. Many believe that weakness and decline are natural, but that is not the truth. It is the result of collective belief, a story repeated from generation to generation. You were formed by wisdom, through wisdom, and that wisdom is still operating in you every moment. When you agree with beliefs of lack or illness, you veil that power. But when you remember that you were born from wholeness and that the light has never diminished, you awaken the current of restoration. Healing begins when you cease to identify with what is fragile and temporary. The body may carry symptoms, but you are not those symptoms. Medical diagnosis may be useful, but you are not a medical label. Your deeper self is the primordial light, the unbroken life. Illness may appear, but your being remains whole. And it is precisely when you hold this belief that the body will begin to respond. All external methods, from medicine to therapy, can be helpful tools. But no method can replace the belief you hold about yourself. If deep down you believe you are weak, that you are unworthy, then every external effort will only bring temporary results. But if you steadfastly maintain the image of wholeness, seeing yourself as a living being sustained by divine intelligence, then that light will begin to restructure every cell, every thought, every emotion. The starting point of all healing is the return to this principle, not a desperate effort to search, but the quiet acceptance that the light has never left. When you sit still and feel, you will realize it is still there, silently upholding you. And from that silence, a new strength will arise, not the force of rigid willpower, but the strength of agreement, of surrendering resistance and allowing life to flow. This primordial light does not promise a life free of trials, but it guarantees that whenever you return, there will always be an inner power ready to restore. Every hardship is only a passing cloud, while the sun remains unchanged. And when you realize this, you no longer seek healing as a distant miracle, but begin to live from that light each day. This is the beginning, the true point of departure. Healing is not a chase after some external ideal, but a simple yet profound act of opening the door to the light that has been there all along. When the door is opened, you are no longer a beggar, but a companion of the law of life. You begin to see clearly that the most sacred thing has never abandoned you, and that the return to this primordial light is the first step to all restoration, all peace, and all freedom. The origin of every illness, every disorder, never begins with the body. It begins in the deeper layers of consciousness, where you have unknowingly agreed with certain images, certain conclusions about yourself, allowing them to seep into the subconscious like commands. The body is merely a faithful mirror, reflecting what the mind has already accepted. If deep within you believe that you are weak, that you are prone to failure, the body will obediently reflect that belief. But if in the depths of your being you hold the image of wholeness, the body will begin to adjust in that direction. That is why the root of all healing does not lie in adding more external methods, but in recognizing the beliefs already sown, and then replacing them with a more enlightened belief. Take a moment to look within. In the quiet moments, what do you truly believe about your health? Do you believe that your body is a fragile machine, always on the verge of breaking down? Or do you believe that it is upheld by divine intelligence, capable of restoring itself? This answer does not lie in the words you speak, but in the unconscious attitude you carry each day. That is why some people, though receiving excellent treatment, continue to suffer, while others recover quickly from the same therapy. It is not by chance, but because one holds an image of wholeness in the subconscious, while the other continues to nurture an identity tied to illness. The truth is, each of us was born with a blueprint of wholeness. That design never disappears. It only becomes hidden beneath layers of distorted belief. When you look at a seed, you may not see a tree, but within that seed lies the complete image and potential of a forest. So it is with human beings. Deep within your being lies the entire roadmap of life, of restoration, of balance. The question is whether you are willing to believe it, whether you are brave enough to awaken that belief and allow the blueprint to unfold. This is the key. Attention. Attention is not tense concentration, but a conscious choice to stop feeding energy to false images and begin nurturing the true one. Have you ever wondered why a simple sentence, a fleeting thought, when repeated over many years, can become someone's destiny? That is the power of attention. Every time you agree with a thought, you are giving it energy to manifest. Therefore, when you learn to keep your attention on the blueprint of wholeness, each cell begins to respond to this new command. Each blood vessel starts to flow with a new rhythm, and the body gradually returns to its original state. This requires honesty, not honesty with a doctor, not honesty with others, but honesty with yourself. You must look directly at your deepest beliefs and ask, Am I secretly believing that I am weak? Am I still holding on to the old story that illness is an inevitable part of who I am? If so, that is the exact place where change must begin, because no external method can overcome a belief that you continue to nurture silently within. And I want to pause here to ask you something right now as you are listening to this message. Are you willing to stop for a moment and ask yourself, what belief have I been repeating unconsciously for years? Perhaps you have believed in illness or in weakness without even realizing it. So if today you choose to replace that with the belief that within you lies a perfect design, that the healing light is still flowing, would you be willing to take one small step and begin living from that belief? I know you are here listening with your heart, and I honor that, because when a person truly makes time for words like these, it means a seed is already present within them, a seed yearning to return to wholeness. And I want to thank you, because your presence is not only precious for yourself, but for the entire stream of life. For every awakened soul becomes a light that helps illuminate the world. What you must remember is this: the root lies in deep consciousness. The body is only the screen. Change the film within, and the screen will automatically change. The blueprint of wholeness is already within you, and attention is the key to activate it. You are not someone searching for a new gift. You are simply the one who opens the treasure that has always belonged to you. And as you begin to open it, the light will not only heal the body, but will also flow into your mind, your emotions, and every relationship in your life. Every function of the body follows the call of thought. Thought is like a frequency tuner. While the body is merely the instrument that echoes the tune, if deep within you are constantly broadcasting the frequencies of fear, lack, and weakness, the body will respond accordingly. It is not betraying you. It is simply being loyal to the melody you have repeated for many years. When you call illness mine, you have granted it citizenship in the house of your mind. But when you begin to call wholeness mine, you allow the body to shift its rhythm. Therefore, the key to healing is not in seeking something distant, but in letting go of faulty patterns and replacing them with images that truly reflect your divine nature. People often believe that external conditions determine health, such as food, climate, or medicine, but these are only secondary factors, catalysts at best. The true origin lies in the field of thought you are nurturing. Two people may live in the same circumstances, eat the same food, go through the same trials, yet end up with opposite outcomes. One may fall seriously ill, while the other remains well. The difference does not lie in their environment, but in the depth of thought. Each has accepted. One has agreed with a fragile image, while the other holds firm to an identity of wholeness. The danger is that many old beliefs no longer appear as clear sentences, but have become the atmosphere you breathe every day. They exist in the silent thoughts. I am weak. I am vulnerable. I will break like those who came before me. It is these hidden streams that govern biology, because the body does not obey shallow declarations. It listens to the enduring undertone you have repeated. If that undertone is fear, the body contracts and shrinks. If that undertone is life, the body opens and restructures itself. Imagine a radio. When tuned to the right frequency, beautiful music comes through. When tuned incorrectly, only static remains. The body is just like that. It does not create the music on its own. It only broadcasts the frequency. Your thought is set to, if you keep the dial on the frequency of illness, no matter how many medications you take, the sound will still be distorted. Only when you change the dial in your mind can the music of life truly play. Healing is not about erasing symptoms, but about ending the nourishment of a false identity. As long as you agree with the image of yourself as a sick person, every other effort is mere patchwork. When you release that identity, you do not deny the symptoms, but you refuse to let them define you. You begin to recognize yourself as a divine being, whole and complete, and the body simply follows the new command. Many are surprised to hear that positive thinking is not a denial of reality, but the choice to anchor yourself in a deeper reality. Symptoms may still be present, but you no longer give them the throne. You look them in the eye, while firmly holding the image of wholeness. This is not fantasy, it is law. The body will not go against the image, long held in the mind. You cannot nurture thoughts of weakness and expect to receive health, just as a field cannot be sown with both wheat and weeds and expect only wheat to grow. Thought is the seed. The body is the harvest. What you sow, you shall reap. There is no exception. Every word you repeat in silence is a form of planting. Seeds that are planted over and over become deep grooves, and those grooves are the tracks the body will follow. This is why true healing begins with the observation of thought. You must recognize what old patterns are operating and have the courage to release them. This does not require physical effort, but it does demand spiritual resolve, for the mind clings to the familiar, even when it is wrong. But when you dare to let go, you open the door to a new rhythm. Everything in your life will begin to shift when your thoughts change, not just your health, but the way you experience the world, the way you respond to others, the way you perceive your future, because all of it arises from the field of thought you are maintaining. Healing is never a standalone act for the body. It is a total rebirth of consciousness, and from that new consciousness, the body simply follows as a mirror. Therefore, the key part of this message is clear. Thought comes before the body. Release the old pattern, build the new one, and let natural law do the rest. The body is not against you. It simply reflects you. If you change the tone, you will change the music, and that music, once it begins to play, will not only be the health of your body, but also freedom, peace, and a new life overflowing with vitality. No one is condemned by genes or the past. Your body is not a fixed replica of your parents or your bloodline. It is a flexible system programmed each day by the language of belief you choose to sustain. Genes may carry patterns, but it is consciousness that determines which pattern is activated. A person can carry within both strong and weak genetic codes, but what they accept into their subconscious becomes the final command. If you believe you are weak, the body will respond with weakness. If you believe you are whole, the body will synchronize in that direction. Belief is the language of biological programming, and you are the one holding the keyboard. This means that every false declaration you have ever repeated unconsciously, such as I am always sick, I am fragile, I always fall apart, can be revoked. These are not life sentences. They are merely commands you once agreed to, and you, by a new decision, can cancel and replace them. The power lies in whether you are willing to stand in the place of the master of your consciousness. No one else can do this for you, and no circumstance has the power to stop you unless you first agree to give that power away. The body does not respond to reasoning. It responds to command. That command is belief, repeated silently yet persistently. If the command is, I am always sick, the body will obey. If the command is, I am upheld by divine life, the body will also obey. The responsibility lies in recognizing that you are the one issuing the command, not the victim of someone else's script. When you change the inner language, you change the immune system, the nervous system, the heartbeat, and the way your cells regenerate, this may overwhelm many people, because responsibility also means you can no longer keep blaming others. No more blaming your parents, your destiny, society, or your doctor, but along with responsibility comes power. If you are the one who created the script, then you are also the one who can rewrite it. In truth, you are already rewriting it every day. Whether you realize it or not, every word you speak about yourself, every thought you agree with, is a stroke of the pen carving into your biological story. So why not pause and choose to write a new story, one that reflects the truth of wholeness rather than repeating old tragedies? Ask yourself, over the years, what beliefs have I been unconsciously repeating? Have I been silently affirming limits without realizing it? And if today you were given the chance to withdraw every mistaken declaration, would you be willing to begin? This is the moment only you can answer, because no one else can stand in this place for you. If you truly feel a call in your heart to change, I want you to leave a sign, comment below, I am ready to change, or simply type the number 1, not just so I know you are present and listening, but so that you affirm to yourself that from today you choose to step into the place of authorship. You choose to withdraw the old declarations and begin a new chapter. I thank you for your presence, because every sincere affirmation you send forth not only transforms you, but adds one more light to this world. Power and responsibility always come together. If you have the power to rewrite belief, then you also have the responsibility not to let yourself live in unconscious repetition. The choice is always present in every moment. Will you continue to write the same old story, or will you begin to write a new one, in which you are no longer the victim, but the creator? The answer only you can give. There is no law in human life more clear than the law of spiritual equivalence. You will never receive anything beyond the image you have consistently held in your mind. That image is the mold, the blueprint that the outer life must reflect. When someone desires health but continues to nurture an inner image of decline, that desire is merely an illusion without foundation. The body does not respond to fleeting wishes. It follows only the image that has been etched deeply and repeated faithfully. If a field is sown with weeds, yet the farmer stands every day praying for a harvest of rice, the result will still be weeds. Thought operates the same way. What is sown is what is reaped. It cannot be otherwise. The difference between wanting and assuming marks the boundary of healing. Wanting is a distant gaze towards something not yet possessed, while assuming is a deep inner agreement that it already belongs to you. When you live in the assumption of wholeness, you no longer wait for health as a future reward. You begin to think and act from the very foundation of health here and now. This is not a trick of self-hypnosis. It is the correct operation of law. Law does not respond to begging. It responds only to the degree of equivalence between your inner image and the outer expression. This explains why some repeat positive affirmations thousands of times and see no result. The issue is not with the words, but with the level of belief beneath them. If in the subconscious the image of self is still tied to illness, then those words are nothing more than paint on a cracked wall. On the other hand, when the inner image truly changes, only a few affirmations are needed. For now, you are not speaking to convince yourself, but to reinforce what has already become an inner reality. Pay attention to how you see yourself when no one else is around. When you think of aging, do you assume that the body must weaken, that the mind must slow, that vitality must fade? These images are silent prophecies, and the body merely obeys. But if you hold fast to the image that you are living within the stream of wisdom and strength, that the body is merely an instrument of spirit, then the law of equivalence will translate that experience into your life. Not all change happens instantly. Just as a seed does not bloom overnight, the inner image must be held long enough to take root. This process is not measured by days or weeks, but by consistency. If today you sow the seed of wholeness, but tomorrow dig it up to check for progress, the roots cannot grow. The law of spiritual equivalence demands perseverance. Hold the correct image until it becomes the natural climate of the mind. When that happens, the body must align to reflect it. The key is unity. You cannot both desire healing and agree with an identity of sickness. You cannot affirm health while clinging to the fear of relapse. The law is not persuaded by words. It reflects only what you have truly accepted. A divided mind produces divided results, but when the mind is unified in the assumption of wholeness, the result cannot be anything but wholeness. This law applies not only to health, but to every aspect of life. Yet health is the most visible mirror, for the body responds quickly and directly to what you believe. When you live in the assumption of wholeness, not only does illness dissolve, but vitality, clarity, and joy begin to take root as the natural atmosphere. And when that atmosphere expands, everything else, relationships, work, finances, rises in rhythm. Those who understand the law of spiritual equivalence realize one thing clearly. You do not need to change the outer world first. The outer world is the result, not the cause. Change the inner image, and the world will rearrange itself. This is the simplicity many overlook, believing action. Interference and effort are most important, but action only works when it flows in harmony with the inner image. Nothing is more powerful than a thought that has been assumed and held firm. The law of spiritual equivalence is a reminder that none of us are powerless. Each of us has the right to choose the image we hold, and that image, if nurtured with consistency, will become an unavoidable experience. If you desire health, do not merely wish for it. Begin to live from the assumption that wholeness is already your nature. When this becomes your foundation, health is no longer a distant reward, but the natural breath of a life in harmony with eternal law. Healing is not merely the disappearance of symptoms. It is the ending of an identity that has become too familiar for many years. People often live inside the role of the victim, a character defined by suffering, failure, or lack. That role may have brought you attention, sympathy, or even a reason to explain what has not yet worked out in life. But it is also the wall that blocks the light of wholeness from pouring in. As long as you cling to the identity of sickness, you cannot open the door for the divine blueprint that waits to express itself. What makes this difficult is that the old self often feels familiar. It says to you, I am you, and if you lose me, you will no longer know who you are. That is why many fear letting go, even while they suffer in the old identity. But for rebirth to happen, an old form must die. This death is not the end of life. It is the ending of an illusion, so that truth may step forward. This is the great turning point on the path of healing. When you realize that the stories of the past, the tales of suffering, no longer define you, you begin to withdraw the energy that once sustained the old self. Every time you stop introducing yourself through your wounds, you allow the body to find alignment with the original design. Illness was never your essence. It was only a layer of dust. When you blow away that dust, the true jewel begins to emerge. There is a truth worth repeating. The body simply follows the identity you have accepted. If the identity is that of a sick person, the body will faithfully obey. If the identity is that of a divine being full of wholeness, the body will follow that as well. The only question is which identity you choose to hold. This choice is not easy, for the old self is tied to memory, to habit, and to a false sense of safety. But only when you allow it to die can you truly step into a new life. This is when the inner voice becomes your most powerful tool. Every word you say inwardly is shaping who you are becoming. This is the power of the voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. When you begin to speak to yourself in the language of wholeness, you are creating an inner space where the true blueprint can enter. And when that space opens wide, the old self no longer has anything to cling to. Many people fear that if they let go of the role of the wounded one, they will lose the care of others. They fear that if they are no longer someone who needs to be healed, they will be abandoned. But the truth is the opposite. When you step out of the identity of the victim, you become a source of light for yourself and for those around you. You no longer need pity because you become living proof of the power of life. Remember, the death of the old self does not come in a loud moment. It often dissolves quietly. It may begin when you stop retelling the old story. It unfolds when you stop defining yourself by past failures. It grows when you choose silence instead of self-attack. And from that quietness, a new peace begins to rise. The peace of someone no longer bound by an outdated role. Letting go is not loss. It is liberation. When you release, you are not losing yourself. You are finding yourself again. What leaves is only a false image, something that has covered you for too long. What remains is the original truth, the indestructible light that has always waited for you to remember. It is the turning point where the body can regenerate, the spirit can rest, and the soul can begin to sing the song. It is always known, and when you pass through that door, you realize that healing does not come from the outside. It comes from permission within. That permission appears only when the old self steps aside, when the role of the victim stops occupying the space, when the old stories come to an end. At that moment, you are no longer waiting for a miracle. You become the miracle. The light of wholeness, already present within you, begins to flood every breath, every step, every choice. The death of the old self is the beginning of true life. And only in that letting go can you feel that you were never broken, only forgetful. Now that you remember, now that you open your heart for wholeness to reveal itself, nothing can stop the process of restoration. This is the only way for the true blueprint to emerge, so that you no longer live as a role, but live as your truth. No sound echoes more deeply than the voice. You whisper to yourself. The phrases you silently repeat are the commands the body listens to. It does not care how much positivity you display outwardly. It obeys the rhythm delivered by your inner whisper. If you constantly criticize yourself, saying, I am weak, I am unworthy, I will never be well, those words gradually become biological foundations, chemicals, a rhythm of unrest for every cell. The body does not judge. It simply obeys. The truth is, many people do not realize they have become accustomed to using harsh language with themselves. Seemingly harmless phrases like, I am so tired, I cannot do anything, or this is just my fate, are deeply embedded messages. Once repeated, these messages do not fade into nothing. They fall into the deeper layers of consciousness, where every command is received. From there, the body begins to align. What you call chronic fatigue or unexplained weakness often begins with that very voice. But it is precisely here that you have the opportunity to redirect. Your inner voice does not have to be your attacker. It can become your gentle and steady companion. This does not mean you must deny your real sensations. If today you are in pain, you do not need to pretend you are healthy. The truth is, you feel pain, but instead of saying, I am weak and broken, you can say, this is a signal, but I remain whole. My body is finding its way back to balance. Just by changing the definition, you have shifted the entire system's direction. The body hears tone, not just words. You can speak the correct words, but if your inner tone is filled with doubt and bitterness, the real command is still doubt. Conversely, when you speak to yourself with trust and respect, even the simplest words carry a different energy. This is why so many healing methods begin by asking you to observe how you speak to yourself. Only then can you clearly see whether you are feeding illness or opening the door to restoration. The inner voice is like the conductor of an orchestra. Every organ, every cell listens to that conductor to stay in harmony. When the voice is full of blame, the conductor beats a chaotic rhythm, and the orchestra of the body becomes disordered. When the voice is grounded and uplifting, the conductor moves with harmony, and the whole orchestra returns to its proper rhythm. A single deep breath paired with a gentle phrase like, I am safe, I am flowing with the current of life, can shift the entire biological atmosphere. What is remarkable is that the body does not require you to shout or affirm loudly. It only needs honesty in your tone. A small phrase in silence, when filled with belief, holds more power than hundreds of hollow affirmations that never reach the heart. That is why training the inner voice requires subtlety, not noise. You must pause and listen to what you are saying. In the spaces, during the waiting, in moments no one is watching, in those times, you will discover what language you are truly accustomed to. True transformation begins when you choose to replace self-attacking language with words that define you at a higher level. If before you said, I am hopeless, now you say, I am in the process of restoration. If before you said, I am just a sick person, now you say, I am a whole soul, using this body as an instrument. Each replacement is like a new brick placed on a new foundation, gradually building a new inner house. And once that new house is established, the body simply reflects it outward. Of course, this change does not happen overnight. Old habits will try to return. There will be moments when you slip and complain again, when you hear the voice of blame rising inside. But if you remain aware and immediately redirect, you have already won. Each time you turn the direction, you weaken the old structure and strengthen the new one. That is how you re-establish the inner conductor, so the orchestra of your body can return to its rightful rhythm. Remember, your inner voice does not only affect your health, it shapes the entire atmosphere of your life. A person who constantly attacks themselves emits a field that makes others feel heavy. A person who speaks to themselves with reverence radiates a natural magnetism, making the environment around them lighter. This is not mystery. It is the natural reaction of energy. Whatever kind of voice you sow into yourself, you will radiate that same climate outward. When you master the inner voice, you enter a new dimension of freedom. You no longer let old phrases define you. You consciously define yourself with truth. This is the power of creation, the power that was given to you from the beginning. And when that power is used with precision and care, healing becomes inevitable, because the body simply follows. And when the inner voice becomes a declaration of wholeness, the body has no choice but to adjust to that definition. There is no energy that blocks the flow of life more powerfully than resentment and self-condemnation. These emotions are not fleeting states of mind. They are silent undercurrents that exert pressure on the nervous system, the cardiovascular system, and every cell of the body. When a person holds on to resentment, They clog the spiritual bloodstream like corroded pipes. When a person condemns themselves, they tighten the soul with a sentence that has no end. In such a state, the divine current cannot move freely, and the body is forced to reflect that blockage through illness or exhaustion. Forgiveness is not merely a moral act, it is a vital principle. Forgiveness does not mean justifying another's mistake or ignoring what happened. It means releasing the burden you are carrying. When you forgive, you are not doing a favor for someone else. You are setting yourself free. You cut the cord that has tied you to an event, a person, or a memory, and in that severing, the energy that was imprisoned begins to flow again. Nothing restores vitality more quickly than a sincere decision to forgive. The truth is, resentment does not only point outward. Many people fail to realize that they are still nurturing their greatest enemy within themselves. They blame themselves for past choices, for mistakes they cannot undo. They replay the invisible sentence, and that sentence becomes the environment they live in every day. From there, the body has no space to regenerate because it is surrounded by the command of punishment. When a person learns to forgive themselves, they open the fastest path to healing, because from that moment on, life is no longer blocked by inner judgment. Forgiveness is not a feeling, it is a decision. You may not feel light immediately, but when you decide to stop clinging to the old story, you have turned the key. Gradually, feelings will follow. Just like turning the course of a river, the water does not change direction instantly, but in time it flows where it is guided. Forgiveness is the same. Once you commit to release, the current of life will find its new path. The difference in a person after forgiveness is unmistakable. Their eyes shine brighter, their breath deepens, their skin softens, not because of a miracle from outside, but because the inner flow has been restored. The body is a faithful mirror. When the mind is released from resentment, the body no longer needs to hold the tension that reflects it. It begins to return to its natural rhythm where healing happens without force. Many ask, how can I forgive when the pain is so great? The answer lies in understanding that forgiveness does not change the past, but it changes the present. You cannot undo what has already happened, but you can choose not to keep living inside it. Forgiveness is the decision to step out of the dark room of memory and open the door for light to enter. If you refuse to forgive, you continue living in darkness, even though the door has always been open. It is also important to remember that forgiveness is not a one-time act. Sometimes memories return, emotions rise again. This does not mean you have failed. It simply means the old layer is dissolving. Each time the memory resurfaces, you have the opportunity to forgive once more, deeper, more completely, and each time the flow within you becomes more clear. Forgiveness is a process, but every small step brings real transformation in both body and soul. When you live in forgiveness, you become a vessel for pure life. Energy flows without obstruction. The mind becomes clearer, the heart lighter, and the body rediscovers its balance. This is why Emmet Fox called resentment a spiritual poison, not because someone punishes you, but because that energy itself blocks life. Conversely, forgiveness is like clear water flushing the pipes, allowing life to surge through every vessel, every breath. Forgiveness opens the flow not only in the mind, but in the body. It is the key that allows you to stop harming yourself with memory and begin nurturing yourself with light. This is not a moral theory, it is a law of life. When you release resentment and self-condemnation, You step out of the loop of blockage and enter the natural current of life, where healing is no longer a hope, but an inevitable result. A medical diagnosis, in its essence, is simply an observation at a moment in time. It describes the condition of the body in the present based on data, symptoms, and medical knowledge, but it is not a life sentence. Danger arises only when a person takes that label and merges it into the identity of how they live. When you hear a doctor say you have a particular illness, and you immediately define yourself as that illness in that very moment, you have transformed a description into an identity, and the body, faithful to the identity you hold, begins to behave accordingly. The difference lies in how you receive it. A wise person listens to a diagnosis to understand how to care for the body, but does not agree to let the diagnosis become their name. They understand that it is merely a data point, not an eternal truth. In contrast, when someone wears a diagnosis like a permanent label, every thought, action, and emotion becomes filtered through that label. And once an identity is formed, the illness is no longer just a condition. It becomes the role that person lives out. Imagine someone diagnosed with a chronic illness. If they believe I am simply someone in the process of recovery, they continue to live from the assumption of wholeness, allowing the body to find its balance. But if they say, this is my illness, they are unconsciously signing a contract with the label. From that point on, every conversation begins by mentioning it. Every plan revolves around it. Every hope becomes limited by its frame. What began as a data point becomes an identity, and once that identity is nurtured, it becomes the law by which the body must operate. This is why Emmet Fox emphasized that illness is never your essence. It is merely a temporary result of a mistaken belief. When the belief is changed, the body will follow. But for that to happen, you must refuse to let any label become your name. You may be told the body is exhibiting this or that symptom, but you must never allow that to become I am. The moment you say I am, you hand over the power of self-definition to an external event, and that is the fastest way to imprison yourself within limitation. The body listens to every signal from consciousness. When consciousness says, I am a patient, the body plays the role of a patient. When consciousness says, I am whole life, the body begins to align accordingly. This is not denial of reality. It is a choice of which layer of reality you live from. Medical reality may record symptoms, but spiritual reality records original wholeness. The question is, from which reality do you wish to define yourself? The greatest danger in attaching to a diagnosis is that it becomes the only lens through which you view the world. You begin to measure your worth by your health status. You plan your future based on the limitations of the diagnosis, and you unconsciously build your life around that label. Instead of treating illness as a data point requiring care, you allow it to become the house you live in. And in doing so, you lock the door to recovery. To break this, you must make a clear separation. A diagnosis is an observation, not a sentence. It can be useful in pointing to what needs attention, but it must never be allowed to define you. You are more than a test result, more than a line in a medical chart. You are original life carrying a blueprint of wholeness. When you hold that identity, your body begins to follow, not because you deny the data, but because you choose to live from a deeper truth. Those who heal in extraordinary ways often share one thing in common. They refuse to accept the name of the disease. They may say, I am experiencing these symptoms, but they do not say, I am this diagnosis. The difference may seem subtle, but it marks the line between being trapped in an identity and opening the door for wholeness to return. The body cannot release itself when the mind still locks itself within the label. Therefore, the true path is not in denying or fearing the diagnosis, but in placing it in its proper place. You listen to it, you consider it, you take necessary action, but you never let it become you. You know who you are, and you allow the body to live according to that definition. When the identity is wholeness, when the inner voice continually affirms wholeness, all external data, including diagnosis, must eventually adjust to match that identity. A diagnosis never has the power to become destiny unless you sign your agreement. You may receive the data, but you must refuse to let it define you, because the unchanging truth remains. You are not the illness, you are not the label, you are whole life seeking expression once again. And when you live from that identity, healing becomes the inevitable path, not the exception. The healing ray is not a mysterious phenomenon that bestows itself at random. It is an absolute law, always present and always active. It is like sunlight. It does not favor anyone, nor does it forget anyone, but it can only enter where the door is open. That door is spiritual agreement. The closed door is inner contradiction. You may pray thousands of times. You may try countless healing methods. But if deep within you are both desiring health and clinging to the identity of illness, the healing ray cannot fully enter. The law cannot be deceived. It only reflects the degree to which you are truly in harmony. Spiritual agreement is not a tense effort. It is a state in which your mind, emotions, and inner image all align on the same side. When you think of health, feel wholeness, and act as someone who is well, you create coherence. In that coherence, the healing ray naturally flows in and begins to reorganize the internal structure. But if a part of you still doubts, still worries, still quietly asks whether this is really true, that contradiction becomes a barrier. The law does not punish you, but it also cannot penetrate conflict. It waits patiently for you to open the door of alignment. Imagine a current of electricity. When the wire is whole, the current flows and lights up the bulb. But if the wire is broken, the light cannot appear. The healing ray is the same. It is always there, but it needs an unbroken path of spiritual agreement. Every doubtful thought, every self-attacking word, every fear repeated again and again is like a cut in the wire. On the other hand, every steady affirmation, every image of wholeness held with constancy is a way to repair the wire, and when the current flows uninterrupted, the light immediately enters. It is here that your inner voice becomes the conductor. If your inner voice is filled with criticism, the body hears that command. If your voice is one of agreement with wholeness, the body hears that too. This is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. When you return to that space again and again, the body begins to reset its healing rhythm, and when that rhythm is sustained, the healing ray does not need to be begged. It simply performs its natural work. Many people believe the healing ray is a reward for perfect faith, but the truth is, it operates as law. Just like gravity does not discriminate, the healing ray does not choose favorites. It only requires alignment. People often become afraid when symptoms do not disappear and think the law has failed. But in truth, symptoms are just the outer layer reorganizing itself according to a new command. If you remain steadfast in your agreement, the outer condition has no choice but to follow. The only question is whether you have enough patience to remain aligned. Inner contradiction is the silent enemy On one hand, you say, I want to be well. On the other, you secretly think, I will never get out of this. On one hand, you affirm, I am whole. On the other, you sink into painful memories. This division prevents the healing ray from flowing freely. The law cannot be tricked by shallow words. It only responds to what you truly believe and hold. So, if you seek healing, you must be resolute, not by denying how you feel, but by refusing to let feeling become your definition. When you accept wholeness as your identity, the healing ray begins its work. It restructures beliefs, calms the nervous system, resets the heart rhythm, restores energy flow in every cell, not because you are more worthy than others, but because you open the way. A room does not become bright because you begged for light. It becomes bright because you open the curtain. The healing ray has always been there. It only needs inner agreement to pour in. This law does more than heal the body. It liberates the soul from inner struggle. When you no longer fight between opposing identities, you become light, whole, and free. You are no longer both begging and doubting, affirming and denying. You now have one voice, and that voice is the truth of who you are. Once that truth becomes your dominant tone, the healing ray will have no resistance left. This is the essence of the law. It does not need noise, only consistency. It does not need desperate effort, only agreement. And in that agreement, the healing ray does the rest. You do not create it. You simply make way for it to operate. That is the greatest liberation. You no longer need to strain and plead. You only need to live from the identity of wholeness and let the law fulfill its part. Imagination is not a child's game or the tool of artists. It is the spiritual architecture studio where inner images are constructed and sooner or later take form in the outer world. Everything you are living today was once drawn within your imagination. Whether you were aware of it or not, if for years you've been in the habit of building worst-case scenarios, visualizing failure, illness, or loss, then it is no surprise that your life reflects that very blueprint. It is not because fate is unfair, but because imagination has been misdirected. The important truth to grasp is that imagination is always active. You cannot stop it. You can only choose its direction. If you let it drift into fear, it will endlessly replay scenes of danger, and the body, loyal to those images, will respond with a racing heart, stress hormones, and restless sleep. On the other hand, if you deliberately use imagination to nurture images of wholeness, the body will also respond and begin adjusting its rhythm to match. Imagination does not only affect emotion, it leaves its imprint on the subconscious, sending instructions to every cell. Remember, imagination is not fiction. It is the tool that shapes reality. When you picture yourself walking freely, breathing with ease, laughing comfortably, you are providing the nervous system with a new map. At first, the body may not yet follow, but as that image is repeated with steady belief, the biology will gradually align. This is why the great thinkers have called imagination the primary creative power. You cannot live a life that exceeds the images you consistently hold. A common pitfall is people believing they lack strong imagination, but in truth, they are using it daily just in the wrong direction. Every time you fear that tomorrow will be terrible, you are using imagination. Every time you recall failure and envision it, repeating, you are using imagination. The issue is not a lack of imagination, but the misuse of it for destruction rather than construction. It is like an architect with excellent materials drawing crooked blueprints. The building will end up crooked too. To make imagination a tool of healing, you must train it to move in the right direction. This does not mean inventing wild fantasies, but rather returning to the divine blueprint that already exists. Imagine the simplest freedoms. You sit up with a light body, you walk without strain, you breathe like a child. Do not chase extreme excitement. Choose images that are calm and real, familiar enough for the subconscious to accept. When familiarity is established, the body begins rebuilding. To reflect it, consider how a farmer cares for his field. He does not plant seeds and walk away. He waters daily, pulls weeds, and waits patiently for sprouts to rise. Imagination requires the same consistency. You cannot visualize once and expect instant results. You must return again and again, nurturing the new image like a habit. Each time you return, the seed of wholeness is watered again. Slowly, it takes root, sprouts, and the body is compelled to follow. This is the difference between directed imagination and mere daydreaming. Daydreaming is fleeting and lacks power to form. Directed imagination is held with consistency and emotion. It becomes a solid blueprint that life cannot help but obey. Therefore, you must be mindful of the images you nurture. Ask yourself, what films am I playing in my mind each day? Are they films of worry and collapse, or of freedom and restoration? That answer tells you what future you are building. Once imagination is used in the right direction, it heals not only the body, but restores the inner climate. You will find yourself no longer living in anxious expectation, but in quiet trust. That trust does not come from false belief, but from having seen the new image so many times that it feels natural. At that point, you are no longer saying, I am trying to believe. You simply believe. The way a farmer believes that seeds will grow. Imagination is spiritual architecture, and each person is the architect of their own life. When you stop using it to build fearful stories and begin forming images of freedom, strength, and renewed normalcy, you are rewriting your own blueprint. And when the new blueprint becomes firm, the healing ray flows through it to bring it into form. This is not a miracle. It is the law of life, for the body can only follow the image that imagination has already built. Healing is not a negotiation, nor is it a reward granted to those who are good enough or spiritual enough. It does not operate by the measure of worthiness. It responds only to consistent agreement. Just as sunlight does not ask what you did yesterday, the healing ray does not require proof. It simply enters wherever the door is open. That door is undivided acceptance, the state in which you stop straining to achieve and begin to cooperate with the original pattern of health that already exists within you. Many people exhaust themselves believing they must try harder, pray longer, or repeat more affirmations to finally qualify for healing. But the more they strive that way, the deeper they fall into a spiral of tension, because the root of that striving is still the belief that I am not enough. I must do something more in order to receive in that state. They are not opening the door. They are building more walls. The art of receiving is not about trying harder. It is about releasing more. You are not required to reach a moral checkpoint or a spiritual milestone. You are asked to agree with the truth that health is already your original blueprint. This requires a subtle shift from striving to cooperating. When you strive, you act like an outsider trying to gain entry. When you cooperate, you realize you are already in the house, and all that remains is to arrange the space so that light can pass through. The one who strives is constantly asking, have I done enough? Am I worthy yet? The one who cooperates asks, how can I align more fully? How can I become more consistent with the pattern of wholeness? This is the difference between tension and rest, between forcing and flowing, in the art of receiving repetition of affirmations or visualizations is not meant to persuade some force outside of you. It is meant to gradually shift the inner climate. You are not begging for a miracle from afar. You are tuning your own instrument to the correct frequency. The less inner contradiction you hold, the more easily the healing ray can enter. The less hesitation you carry, the stronger the current becomes. What matters is not whether you believe perfectly from the start, but whether you are willing to agree again and again until agreement becomes your natural state. Have you ever noticed that sometimes you try very hard yet see no progress? Perhaps it is because deep inside there is still a part of you that doubts, that clings to an old identity, that still believes you are not really allowed to receive. Pause and ask yourself, what makes me think I am not allowed? Who set that condition? If you dare to face that question, you will see that every rule of worthiness is just a belief habit, not a truth. And once you realize that you can step out of the useless cycle and open the door for the healing ray to pour in, receiving does not arrive with fanfare. It needs no drama. It usually comes quietly. In the moment you stop struggling and simply agree, a deep breath paired with a whisper, I agree with the life in me, can change the entire atmosphere within. From there, the nervous system softens, the heartbeat steadies, and the body begins to respond to the message of safety. No command is more powerful than that gentle agreement. Let me pause here and ask you, are you truly opening yourself to receive, or are you still unconsciously waiting until you believe you have done enough to deserve healing? This question is not for judgment. It is here for you to locate yourself on the journey, because if you are still thinking someday I will be worthy, then today is not yet the day you have opened the door. And I want to thank you for sitting here with me, listening and facing that question. Your presence here means you are ready to shift from striving to cooperation, from seeking to receiving. The art of receiving does not teach you how to push harder. It teaches you how to pause at the right moment, to stop sentencing yourself, to stop measuring merit, to stop turning healing into a prize. When you stop, you see clearly that there is nothing to fight for. Health does not come from outside, and it rises from within, like a spring that only waited for the final stone to be removed. You are not a beggar at the door. You are the owner of the house who has forgotten the key, is already in your hand. And once you remember that the healing journey becomes light, no more pressure, only agreement, no more strain, only cooperation. And in that state, the healing ray moves naturally, not as a rare blessing, but as an unchanging law. Pain is not an enemy sent to destroy you. It is an intelligent signal of life, an urgent letter from within, calling you to examine something that has gone off course. When the body aches, it is telling you that a belief, a way of living, or a relationship has drifted from the orbit of truth. Rather than trying to simply make the pain disappear, the wise response is to listen to the message hidden within it. For if you only silence the fire alarm without addressing the fire, you will miss the very purpose of the signal. Pain has many layers. Sometimes it is physical, calling for rest, healing, or adjustment. Other times it is emotional, reminding you of long-held suppression, unresolved resentment, or patterns of living that no longer serve you. Whatever the level, the essence of pain remains the same. It is a call for cooperation, an invitation to pause and transform. If you see pain as the enemy, you will resist it. And resistance only makes the signal grow louder. If you see pain as a message, You open the door to partnership, and once the lesson is received, the signal begins to soften. Many equate pain with injustice and ask, why must I endure this? But a more helpful question is, what is pain? Trying to show me, perhaps you have lived in a cycle of exhaustion, neglecting your body for too long. Perhaps you have allowed yourself to remain in fear, anger, or toxic relationships that your mind no longer dares to escape. Perhaps you have so tightly identified with the role of the victim that you no longer see any other way. When these conditions persist, pain arrives as the final attempt to bring you to a halt. In many cases, pain is actually a form of rescue. It stops you from descending further into patterns that destroy. It forces you to recalibrate, to face what you have long avoided, to re-examine what is nourishing or draining your soul and body. No signal speaks louder than pain when it is time to awaken. Without it, many would blindly continue until total collapse. So instead of cursing it, you are invited to cooperate and decode it. To decode pain means to look deeply into its root. A recurring physical ache may be the body's cry for care. A sharp emotional wound may be a memory that has never been forgiven. A persistent tension may be the product of a belief that says, I am not enough. I must carry this forever. When you dare to look directly, you will find that pain does not come to weaken you, but to offer the chance to be free from old chains. It is also important to remember that pain may not vanish immediately once the lesson is understood, but once you change your relationship with it, the experience of pain becomes entirely different. It no longer feels like a burden, but like a teacher. You are no longer desperate, but more composed, and that very composure creates the environment for healing to unfold. When you stop resisting, the nervous system stops broadcasting danger, and the body shifts from defense to repair. Pain may still be present, but its meaning has changed, and in that shift of meaning, you have entered the healing process. Pain also teaches you the limits of ego. When you are convinced you can carry everything alone, pain arrives to remind you that no one is designed to live in depletion. When you cling to the role of the victim, pain comes to ask whether you wish to remain in that story or are ready to choose a new identity. It is both a challenge and a doorway. If you try only to escape, the door closes. If you have the courage to step in, it opens to a new world where life flows once again. So change how you face pain. Do not ask how to make it disappear instantly. Ask what it is calling you to adjust. Do not see it as a sentence. See it as a signal. Do not hate it. Thank it for pointing the way. With this attitude, you transform pain from an enemy into an ally, from an obstacle into a teacher. And once the lesson is received, the healing ray has a clear path to move through you. Pain is not punishment. It is a call for cooperation, a chance to return and realign your beliefs, your habits, your relationships. When you answer that call, you do not only heal the body, you elevate your entire spiritual life. Pain is the signal, and you hold the key to determine whether that signal leads to despair or to rebirth. The body has never been your enemy. It is your most loyal companion on the journey of life. Every heartbeat, every breath, every movement is evidence that the body is constantly serving you, constantly responding to the commands of your consciousness. It does not argue. It does not resist. It simply reflects back what you transmit. When you send tones of blame, the body braces itself in defense. When you send tones of trust, the body relaxes and begins to heal. In truth, your inner tone and the expectations you carry form the biological climate that your body lives in each day. A climate filled with tension doubt, and self-attack forces every cell to work within a storm. The immune system weakens, sleep becomes fragmented, the breath shortens, because the unspoken command you constantly emit is that we are not safe. On the other hand, a climate of trust and kindness allows the body to open, to balance its systems, to restore function, and even to awaken its innate power, to regenerate. You cannot expect the body to flourish in a climate of doubt. Just as a garden cannot bloom in frost, you must choose to become the climate maker with your own inner voice as the tool. This is the power of voice within, not just a sound you hear, but a place you return to. When you return to that space and gently affirm, I am safe, I am supported, I am cooperating with life, the body begins to recalibrate. It does not need dramatic promises. It needs the steady rhythm of a kind voice. One whisper, repeated each day, is more powerful than 1,000 cries in desperation, because the body is not persuaded by noise. It responds only to consistency. To cooperate with the body means to abandon the habit of treating it like a battlefield. How many times have you scolded it for pain, grown frustrated with its slowness, grown angry at its fatigue? Each of those reactions is like issuing a command that the body is a burden, and the body, faithful as a mirror, simply reflects what you say. But when you treat it as an ally, speak to it with confidence, soothe it with expectations of peace, the body responds differently. It softens, it opens, it begins to trust you. This cooperation does not mean denying symptoms or pretending everything is perfect. It means redefining how you speak to your body. In times of difficulty, instead of saying, I cannot take this anymore, you can say, I am facing a challenge, but I still have resources. Instead of labeling yourself as weak, you can affirm, I am learning to be stronger every day. A small change in tone, repeated many times, gradually builds a new climate in which the body can heal. What matters most is creating a climate of trust. When you believe the body has the capacity to heal, you send a message of safety to the nervous system. When you are gentle with yourself, you release balancing hormones instead of stress chemicals. Every choice of inner language is like a brick you lay to build the home in which your body will dwell. If you build with doubt, the house will be cold. If you build with trust, it will be filled with light. Remember, your body listens to you more than anyone else. It hears every whisper in your mind, every comment you make when you are tired, every storyline you play out in your imagination. You may hide your emotions from others, but not from your body. It knows, it senses, it reacts. That is why the tone you choose is not a small matter, but the foundation of your entire biological weather system. To cooperate with the body also means learning to listen when it signals pain is not betrayal. It is a reminder to pause. Fatigue is not weakness. It is a call to rest. When you listen, instead of resist, you step into relationship instead of confrontation. And within that relationship, healing does not have to be forced. It occurs naturally as a result of sustained trust and care. You cannot change everything overnight, but you can begin with a simple decision. From today, I will speak to my body as a companion. I will build a climate of trust and kindness so that each cell lives in light, not in the shadow of doubt. When the climate changes, the season of healing arrives not as a surprise, but as an inevitable result. Expectation is the hidden compass of life. It determines your direction even when you are unaware. A person may say, I want to be healthy. But if deep down they are still preparing for collapse, the body and circumstances will follow that hidden command. Expectancy is not a vague hope. It is an inner posture of preparation, an invisible atmosphere shaping the way you walk, speak, and choose. When expectation leans toward wholeness, every small detail of your day begins to reflect that truth. When it leans toward decline, each small decision builds in that direction. The power of expectation lies in its quietness. It needs no loud declarations. It is planted through daily habits, the way you wake up in the morning, the words you use when speaking about your body, the rhythm you keep between work and rest. All are signals declaring what you are truly anticipating. If you repeatedly say, I know the illness will return, you have just scheduled its comeback. If you affirm, my body has the ability to recover, you are opening the path for the healing ray to enter. There is no neutrality in expectation. You are always planting on one side or the other. Living as if is the way to train your expectation into reality. You do not wait for results to believe. You believe first, and let that belief shape how you live. Those who live as if are not pretending, they are simply allowing a higher truth to guide their choices. They choose to eat as someone who knows their body is precious. They choose to speak as someone who knows the body is an ally. They walk as someone who already belongs to the rhythm of wholeness. Every action becomes a resonance, and expectation is no longer a fleeting thought, but the prevailing climate. This does not mean denying your current reality. It means you no longer let present conditions be the only definition of you. You can admit I'm tired while also living as someone on a path of recovery. You can say I'm learning to be healthier instead of I'm a patient. The difference in language may seem small, but holds immense power. Language is the mirror of expectation, and expectation is the compass pointing you back to the state of being already healed. When you live as if, you are sending a consistent signal to your entire biological system. The nervous system hears and stops, broadcasting danger. The immune system receives the command and begins to rebalance. Every cell responds like a soldier receiving clear orders. There is no need for a grand ceremony. What is needed is steady, faithful signals. Each day, each choice, each word is a gentle yet firm rhythm building the climate of healing. Think back to a time when you were waiting for something important, a meeting or a trip. Expectation moved you to prepare your clothes, arrange your schedule, and adjust your attitude. You had not seen the event yet, but you lived as if it were already near. In the same way, when you expect health, you begin to live as if it is present. You sleep with the sense of being supported. You wake with the belief that the new day brings restoration. You speak to your body as a trusted partner. And when that climate is sustained, the body will have no choice but to gradually reflect that expectation. Many people confuse expectation with hope. Hope often contains a sense of lack, while expectation prepares for what is certain. Hope says, I wish. Expectation says, I am ready. This shift from wishing to preparing changes the entire inner atmosphere. You are no longer waiting in anxiety. You are walking in readiness, and that readiness is the signal that allows the healing ray to flow more powerfully. Expectation is also trained like a muscle. At first, it may feel difficult to believe when nothing has changed, but each time you choose words of wholeness, each time you act as if you are in the healing process, you strengthen the muscle of expectation. Gradually, it becomes instinct. You no longer have to force positive thoughts. You naturally expect life, and when that happens, the atmosphere around you is completely transformed. Living as if is not a performance for the world. It is a quiet action in every detail. You brush your teeth not as someone exhausted, but as someone caring for a healthy body. You walk not as someone hesitant, but as one whose steps are steady. You speak of the future not as one bracing for disaster, but as one who has already seen the light. When those small acts accumulate, expectation becomes a solid foundation, and the healing ray finds a straight path to enter. Expectation is a hidden compass, and living as if is the way you hold that compass in your hands. You are no longer swept away by randomness. You adjust your direction through daily choices, rhythms, and words, and in doing so, you begin to live from the healed state, not as a promise, but as a reality slowly unfolding. When the journey reaches its ripeness, a profound sign begins to appear. You are no longer obsessed with the illness, no longer measuring every shift, no longer asking again and again when healing will come. The mind stops orbiting around disease as the center of life. Instead, you begin to rest in a rhythm of stillness, a calm inner space where the healing ray has always flowed, uninterrupted, never needing you to push or force. This is the return, not to a new place, but to a state that was always there from the beginning. This stillness is not the silence of despair. It is the quiet that arises when you cease struggling. Before, you had to strain to believe, to fight for hope. Now, you realize there is nothing to fight for. The healing ray has never left. It has only waited for you to stop resisting, to stop building walls. When you relax and still the noise in your mind, the flow appears at once, like a stream that was always running underground, now released from the stones that blocked it. To dwell in the stillness is to realize that health was never something external to be claimed. It is the sacred foundation already rooted within you, simply covered by layers of worry, resentment, and distorted expectation. When that dust clears, the foundation reveals itself firm and radiant. You no longer need to prove anything to the world or to yourself. You simply live, and live in the remembrance that you were whole all along. The strange beauty is that when the mind no longer fixates on the illness, the body begins to shift naturally. When you stop inspecting symptoms, the nervous system is released from surveillance and can enter its mode of recovery. When you stop wearing the identity of a sick person, each cell begins to listen to a new signal. The body, being only a reflection, adjusts itself when you stop focusing on the crack and instead align with the inner image of wholeness. The stillness is not something you force into being. It is the natural outcome of spiritual maturity. In the beginning, you needed affirmations, visualizations, carefully chosen words, but once belief has taken root, those practices lose their strain and become a quiet rhythm of life. You no longer rehearse to convince yourself. You simply live in the pattern already engraved, and within that ordinariness lies an extraordinary power. You have crossed into the realm of stability. In this stability, you also see that healing is no longer the goal. It is the consequence. You are no longer chasing it. You are allowing it to follow like sunlight that shines everywhere. You stop searching for light and simply open the door. Stillness and return is the moment you understand the door was never locked, and all that was needed was to stop blocking it with your fears and old stories. The healing ray is always flowing. It does not wait until you are righteous. It does not demand that you be faultless. It requires no elaborate ritual. It only asks for permission, and that permission comes when you quiet the inner noise, when the mind stops crafting tragic scripts, when the heart releases its grip on old wounds, when the soul no longer looks outward for affirmation. You fall into stillness, and in that stillness, you return like a prodigal child realizing the home was never lost. The miracle is that in this state, you no longer need loud evidence in order to believe, you know it through the peace in your breath, through the lightness of sleep, through a sense of safety that reason cannot explain. And when that knowing becomes your center, everything on the outside begins to align accordingly. You are not healed because you proved something. You are healed because you stopped needing to prove. Stillness and return is not the ending. It is the beginning of a new way of living, a way in which health is no longer a tense pursuit but a natural atmosphere. You are no longer haunted by illness, nor by the pressure to be well. You simply live, and live in the flow of wholeness. This is the moment you understand that wellness does not come from the outside. It rises from within. In this state, you no longer ask, when will the pain go away? You ask, how shall I live today from the resources already within me? You no longer seek signs to reassure you. You rest in the peace that already is. The healing ray is still flowing, and you are no longer outside of it. You are within it. This is the moment you truly return, not to begin something new, but to recognize what has always been true. You were already healed. You were already whole. You were already supported. When you complete these 16 steps, you will realize that healing is not a destination, but the natural atmosphere that surrounds you the moment you return to your authentic center, no longer revolving around illness, no longer waiting for a miracle. You step into the stillness where the healing ray is always flowing. It is not a performance, but an agreement, not a struggle, but a cooperation. From this point forward, every breath, every rhythm of life, every choice you make becomes a living testimony to a truth that never changes. You were already healed, already whole, already upheld,